In the previous video, we looked at presuppositions we may have about the devil and Satan. With that taken care of, let's turn our attention to the biblical evidence. An obvious place to begin a study of the devil and Satan in the Bible is Genesis 3, where we read about how sin entered the world. Now this passage makes no mention of the devil or Satan. The only creatures present in the events of Eden were Adam, Eve, and the serpent. The fact that the serpent could talk may suggest to some that supernatural forces were at work, but the account itself makes no such claim. It is only when we read the New Testament that Satan's activity in the Garden of Eden becomes evident. For instance, Revelation 12 verse 9 refers to, quote, "the ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world," end quote. And Jesus, in John 8 verse 44, describes the devil in terms that evoke the lying serpent of Eden. Yet, we need not arrive in the New Testament to find direct mentions of Satan. The word Satan comes from the Old Testament. It is a Hebrew word meaning adversary. It is used in a number of passages in the Old Testament, and in some of them, it means just adversary in a generic sense. There are several passages, however, where it evidently means more than just an adversary. In this short discussion, we will look at two: Job chapters 1 and 2, and Zechariah chapter 3. In both texts, the word Satan has the definite article, so the text refers to the adversary, and not just an adversary. The context of these passages supports the identification of Satan as an angelic being, since in both cases he appears in the presence of angels. What may come as a surprise to some is that the biblical word devil also originates from the Old Testament. To see how, we must first understand the role of the Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Old Testament created by Jewish scholars in the 3rd century BC. By the time of Christ, the Septuagint was a very popular version and was often used by the New Testament writers when quoting from the Old Testament. In both Job 1 and 2 and Zechariah 3, among other passages, the Septuagint translated the Hebrew Satan with diabolos, the Greek word from which we get devil in the New Testament. And, of course, the Old Testament is the source of the New Testament term Satanas, which is simply the Hebrew word Satan transliterated into Greek. Christadelphians often treat the New Testament devil and Satan as if completely unrelated to these Old Testament Satan passages, apart from a similarity in lexical meaning. But in reality, the Old Testament provides us with the literary foundation for these New Testament ideas. It is true that the Old Testament does not spell out precisely who or what Satan is, and there is debate among Bible scholars about the identity of Satan in Job 1 and 2, Zechariah 3, and other Old Testament passages such as 1 Chronicles 21:1. However, there are good reasons why the identification of the Old Testament Satan with an angelic being has persisted in Jewish theology since the intertestamental period. And, as we shall see, this interpretation provides the most plausible background to the devil or Satan described by the Jewish writers of the New Testament.